So in this video, I'm going to speak about the pest control industry in particular, but it is for the purposes of illustrating a more abstract and broad assertion that our civilization is dependent upon spiritually corrupt practices. And they have to be that way, or else it wouldn't work. In other words, we are wholly dependent upon something which is tainted evil, and if it wasn't, it would fail. And as such, our civilization is in deep trouble because the spiritual underpinning of it is rotten. And when people become better people, when we evolve better, then the whole thing's going to fall apart. And if it doesn't, there are still natural consequences to the evil, and it's going to fall apart. So it's either going to fall apart one way or the other, either because the foundation is rotten and it has its own consequences to being rotten, or it's rotten and people ascend to stop using it, and then it's going to fall apart anyways. I think this is one of my best videos yet, so I hope you get something of value out of it. You either have eyes to see and ears to hear, or you don't. And here we go.
Okay, I want to talk about the pest control industry in America. I can't speak about other countries with their regulatory regimes. I have to only speak about what I've dealt with. I worked 3 years as an exterminator. And I want to say that, broadly speaking, it's a dirty fucking industry. And it may be that there is no getting around that. To have a modern civilization, it requires the unfortunate over-application of pesticides. I am not a biochemist. I am not an environmental scientist. I'm not an entomologist. I don't specialize in rodents, okay? I'm a working class guy with a working knowledge of being an exterminator. And I was a good one. I learned quickly. When I look at all the amount of dishonesty, amount of fuckery in the industry, though, I'm just saying there's an incentive that does not absolve the individual of their responsibility, does not absolve them of the immorality of their dishonesty, but there's an incentive. And one of the things I noticed is that you have a contract with say, a commercial customer, and the contract's pretty plainly written. It says we're going to cover the following pests. And there's like payment terms on it. And you would check off, they'd be like ants, cockroaches, flies, whatever. You check it off and they'd sign it. And it'd be so much per month or per week, whatever the payment terms are, that's what it would be. Some facilities required weekly service. This is completely normal. Some required monthly service and so on. But what happens, though, is they'd be paying a fee, whatever. Let's say it's a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant, and they're paying a certain amount per month. But then they get a rat gets into the building, and then we start charging them extra for extra traps to catch the rat, even though they already have rat service covered. Oh, by the way, we had to use 12 snap traps. 12 times fee for trap. That's what we're charging you. They would charge them, and then, of course, they'd recover the equipment after, too, sometimes. It depends on who you were. There's some people who would say, no, that's their equipment. They paid for it. We're going to leave it if the account ends or something. And others say, nope, taking them out when we're done. But they're still paying us for those because they're getting used. There was nothing on the contract that said extra charges for equipment may be required. And so we had a technician who unfortunately had a DWI, and someone else had to drive him around to do his work. And I was amazed that a DWI, you wouldn't lose your job because you couldn't operate your vehicle. And I appreciate the fact that the employer was forgiving. It might have been harsh, but at the time, maybe they couldn't afford to lose their people. I don't know what the circumstances were. Apparently, DWI or DUI was not uncommon, and it happened more than once, to the point where the boss, when a customer gave me a bottle of wine, the boss was like, "Don't you be sipping on the way home with that." And of course not. I want to enjoy it. Yeah. I'm going to drink while I drive. And this was a guy who, I guess he was going through some shit. Okay, I understand when people are going through a life crisis, their productivity, their quality will go down, their functionality will go down. But I had to cover his routes for one day. And he was just, it's normal for a pest control technician in a commercial account to occasionally miss an insect monitor, a tin cat, an exterior station, whatever. Okay, you make a mistake, you have a brain fart, whatever. You don't have to be perfect. I don't expect perfection. It's wrong to expect perfection. Well, the place was neglected. We had a customer. They had exterior rodent stations. We had tin cats inside the facility. They weren't serviced for a whole fucking year. Because my name, my signature, and my date was on the glue boards from the last time they were serviced a year prior. I'd covered the route. And no one had changed them since then. It wasn't because they were obstructed by equipment. Sometimes things get moved around in warehouses and you can't get to a trap. Perfectly reasonable reason. That's a good reason to not service a trap. Nothing was done. There were exterior rodent stations that hadn't been serviced for a year. Again, I was the last one to service those traps. And so they were getting overrun with mice. And so our sales team sold them an upgraded service. Like, you obviously need more service to keep the mice at bay. So I was going to install more equipment. You know, there's more passive defenses. You put more exterior feeding stations outside, more tin cats inside. And the ground was covered with like a foot of snow. I'm like, well, where's the existing traps? And I just thought of, like, what would be a logical place to put these traps? So I go out with my shovel and I dig out the traps where they would naturally be. I don't think it was likely I was going to remember, because I go to so many places. I went to the logical place to put the traps, and everyone can disagree a little bit about where they would be if they're covered in snow. That's fine. It's okay to have differences of opinion. That's not a problem. But it so happened that I was able to find all the traps. Exterior rodent station, that's what I'm talking about. And I'm like, oh, here they are, okay. Well, I make sure they were anchored properly, I opened them up to rebait them. I'm in service in a year. So I install the exterior equipment, I go inside to make sure all the interior equipment's installed. And that's when I discovered the tin cats weren't serviced in a year either. I'm like, what the hell's this guy been doing for the past year with his driver driving his DWI ass around? Now, I don't hate people who had DUI. We all make mistakes. Sometimes it's innocent. You went out, you had one too many, you misjudged whether you were sober, you got busted, okay? It's a mistake. It's not a life. It shouldn't be a life ending. It shouldn't be necessarily, it shouldn't be a severe punishment. It should be a correction, and then you move on. It's a correction that says, remember not to do this again. Remember to drive sober. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so what the fuck was he doing? So I took the glue boards back and I talked to the boss. I interrupted the meeting where the bosses were meeting. I'm like, we just sold an upgrade to somebody who wasn't getting service to begin with. I don't know what he was doing. We weren't doing it. It's dishonest. Like, I don't want to work for you if this is what's going on here. We got to fix this problem. Now, I wasn't as forceful about that, but that's essentially what I said.
Another example is I had to go cover a gas station with a small food service that this fellow had serviced before, and the boss particularly was paying attention to it. He says, let me know if they need more service. I bet they probably need more service than what they're paying for. So I go up there, and they have an ongoing mouse problem. And So I'm investigating. I'm thoroughly checking the place out. Like, hey, I'm taking my job seriously. You know, the fact that they're paying $100 for the service doesn't mean I'm only going to spend an hour here. I'm going to be here until the problem's solved. So I investigate the building, and yeah, they're pretty. They got a mouse problem. There's poops here. There's poops there. So part of my investigation was I noticed someone had put steel wool in a wall void on the inside. It's like near their bathroom. So I pulled the steel wool out, looking to see if the mice were inside there, and some tracking powder someone had put in there had blown out on me, which was like gross and stupid, whatever. And apparently the technician had stuffed steel wool in there just to manage perceptions. The customer had complained that the customer had complained that mice were coming out of that hole, so he stuffed something in the wall to stop the mice from coming through. He didn't actually investigate and try to solve the mouse problem. There was no substantive problem solving. It was perception management as opposed to problem solving. Now, for people of that sort, perception is the problem as opposed to the mice being the problem. And so the industry attracts people who are natural con men, smooth talkers, know how to push your emotional buttons just right, and so they do very little work and talk it up real big, as opposed to like doing whatever work is necessary and then explaining it. And so that is the industry attracts people of all types, all backgrounds. All right, I'm going to get to the point in this video is that whether you are wicked or righteous, so to speak, you're still doing wicked stuff. You're still corrupt because the very nature of the industry is corrupt. Even the more idealistic people end up doing bad things because in order to actually function as an exterminator, you have to do bad things.
So I'm like, oh, someone stuffed steel wool in the hole. I pull it out, powder flies out all over the place, but like the place is overrun. I'm like, oh, well, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a trapping plan. I'm gonna put some snap traps. I'm gonna make a map where they are, and I'm gonna put them where it's a good place where the activity is, and try to snap out these mice. I made a good faith effort. And it was like a food service counter with it was like a refrigerated, like little deli counter. So I went underneath. I took the plate off the back of the unit on the bottom, where like all the evaporator coils and stuff were, and I stuck one or two traps under there. Screwed it back on, real simple. Made a map, left it there in the logbook. So when the guy went there later, he's like, "How'd you get under there to put traps?" I'm like, "I unscrewed the cover." Oh. But I was starting to get irritated because time after time I'm going to where this guy had done his work, where he hadn't been doing his work. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. I don't know if he was going around giving back massages to the customer or what. What he wasn't doing was killing bugs and mice and rats. He wasn't doing it. And if he tried it all, it was half-ass. And it turned out I couldn't wipe them out of that gas station. Not quite a supervisor, but a senior person went there. He says they were hiding up in the rooftop where the lights are over these gas pumps, and that's where they were nesting. So he managed to get up there and wipe them out. And this is not an isolated thing, time and time again. Like they tell us, like, do IPM, integrated pest management. IPM, it produces money. When you go like, I don't want you applying pesticides right away. We want you to solve the root problem. Go in there, let them know that if there's rotted wood, they got to replace it. If there's gaps, they got to fix the gaps underneath the doors. They got to do that. Okay. So I go there, I do IPM. Like, why aren't you spraying? Why aren't you solving our problem? Because we're supposed to do IPM. And it was explained that we're taught to do that. Like, no, do the sanitation and the physical corrections first, then apply pesticides if that fails. I was following what I was taught to do. But really, it was just neurotypical people telling you shit they don't mean. And then they really said, well, you're supposed to apply pesticides too. Okay, and I didn't mind using pesticides. And we have customers, they weren't even using integrated pest management. They have people like, he sprays every time he comes in here. Like, if you're not going to spray, we're not going to pay you. Like, I'm not going to just spray by default. And I discussed it with the supervisor. Like, well, you just spray anyways, if that's the case. I'm like, what are we doing for? Why are you teaching me one thing? We're supposed to use IPM with the customers. You go in to do it. This person's used to getting hosed down on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And so I go in, I don't hose them down, they get angry. I'm like, we're not paying you if you don't spray. Unfucking believable. So I'm trying to put the company policies into practice, and then just time and time again. No, part of it is that these guys are overscheduled. There was some, ideal dollar amount charged. Like if you have in a given working day, there's so much you're doing, so many dollars per hour of work. And so if your dollar value was less than that, they add to your schedule. Like, hey, we got another sale in your zone. You gotta find a place for it. People are like, well, I'm overworked, I can't do anything. Like, no, you gotta find a place for it. Your schedule does not have enough dollars per day, so you need to put it in there somewhere.
I'm going to use a concrete example to illustrate what I've been talking about because I need a concrete example to get my point across. So let's say, and these numbers are not real, they're based on a principle that I have observed. So let's say a company charges so much per hour for you to be there as a commercial pest control technician for regular service. It could be weekly, it could be monthly, it could be bi-weekly. And so let's say, for the sake of argument, it's $100 an hour, right? And they want you to be on site 6.5 hours a day. And that gives you an hour and a half in your 8-hour day for travel time and for callbacks. And if you don't know what callbacks are, this is perfectly normal. There are times where bugs or mice may emerge. They come shipped in on product. They come in through a hidden hole you didn't know about. And then you have to go back and treat under our contractual obligation to treat the pests. And that's completely normal and completely fine. So $100 an hour, 6.5 hour day for a daily goal of $650. With this in mind, they give you 13 stops a day. If there are half-hour stops at $50 a stop, then it'd be $650. Now, you might have jobs that are less than $50. Maybe you have a $25 and it would be a 15-minute service. Just in and out real quick. This acknowledges that there's a sunk cost into traveling, into getting your equipment out, and getting your equipment put away, into interacting with the customer. So if you have a lot of cheap services, then you're not going to meet the dollar goal, and you can't actually do the service, do quality service, unless you limit the number of stops. Right? So limit the number of stops to ensure quality, and that's great because I'm going to just hop over here. There's 3 things we have to consider. Okay, there's your contractual obligation to the customer, all right? Keeping your word. Like, these pests are covered on the contract, so these are the pests we're going to treat. Second, there's internal company policies that govern how you do your job. And just make sure that you're evaluating your technicians fairly. And if it turns out the policy doesn't work, you can always change the policy, and that's fine. And then third, all these 2 things serve the purpose of earning money, which is why you're working to begin with. So, in theory, if an account is sold and you have less than $650 in a particular day of service, then they want you to do that work that day. So let me give a calendar to show what I'm talking about. So this calendar here it's made up. It's based on 4 weeks and 5 days a week. And this person has 650, 650, 650 for most of their days, all right? Full days work according to company policy. There's a few days that don't. This one's 625, this has 625, this has 600, and this one has 610, all right? So there is a deficiency of 25, 50, 100, $140, which translates to about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes of work. So if your goal is to have a full schedule, which adds up to $13,000, you're making less than $13,000 that month. Now the salesperson will sell a new account in your territory, and the manager will assign it to you, and they'll say, here's your new account. Let's say it's a $100 account. That's 1 hour's worth of work. Fit it in your schedule. Now, based on the number of stops, well, the dollar amount, this technician may not have time for that. Say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. So, well, yes, you do. Look here, I see you have a deficiency of an hour and 20 minutes in your month. Fit it in. This is assigned to you. Get it done. So yes, you can rearrange your schedule based on travel and the proximity of different places, but in the end, you have company policies you have to adhere to and the obligation to the customer. So if the company policy is $100 an hour, they expect you, say for a $100 account, to be on site working for an hour. And you have supervisors that will go around and audit your paperwork and follow up on your work to make sure you're doing it right. And they're going to review your check-in and your check-out times relative to the price of the account. If you're only at your $100 account for 15 minutes, you get dinged for that. They want you there thoroughly looking around for bugs and mice and rats. Even if there's not much going on, give them their dollar value, give them the value that they're paid for. On the other side, we have this contractual agreement. So it could be that a place requires more work than they're paying for. Now, there is no time obligation in the contract. That's an internal policy. So let's say, based on company policy, they're paying for 1 hour's worth of service, but every time you're there for an hour and a half out of necessity. Well, then that's your agreement. That's what you have to do. But if you do that, then you're breaking with company policy. So in theory, that this should come first, keeping your word, right? We have an agreement. We do it, and I did this. Okay, I got spoken to several times for spending too much time on site dealing with pest problems when they weren't paying very much. Now you can renegotiate contracts, but under the current contract, you were obliged to do something, and I was following through, keeping our word. But then there's internal company policy, and the company policy would conflict with the contractual agreements. So the technician is going to get fucked either way. Either to add this extra account to his schedule, he either has to fuck the customer on service or break with company policy. Either way, they're going to get dinged. So you pick whichever one's convenient. Which one am I less likely to get in trouble for based on my assessment of the situation? And that's the bad thing you do, because again, in the end, it's all about earning money. It's about earning money for the technician. It's especially about earning money for the corporation. This, the correct hierarchy of value should be the contractual agreements, the company policy for fair evaluations in service of earning money. Earning money becomes the most important thing. And then the contract and the policy, well, whatever's convenient, whatever works in the moment. And so the consequences of all this, okay, of our spiritual, economic, and political system manifests in a lack of social trust, right? We do whatever we can get away with, right? That's those pest control guys. They're all dirty. They're all corrupt. Environmental damage. Nobody's watching. Squirt, squirt. I got a deadline to meet. I got numbers to make. And we become spiritually degraded creatures because of that, because money becomes the most important thing. Money becomes the most important thing. Everything else is about the dollar, and you need it because everything's monetized, everything's financialized. You can't make a living being honorable above all things. You will starve. You'll end up destitute, and maybe we're supposed to be destitute. Some of the most amazing people who've ever existed live marginal existences because they didn't love money. They didn't love material gain above all other things. But the average person, to survive, has to engage in this kind of corruption, both on an individual level and on a corporate level, a societal level. Right? And that's why the vast majority of the pest control industry is corrupt. And people say, oh, we abide by all the laws. Well, following the law doesn't make you not corrupt. We have best practices, which are easily set aside in service of money. But in return, let's just be honest, we get nice things, all right? We get houses that aren't overrun with bugs. We don't get pharaoh ants crawling up IV lines and infecting people's wounds. We don't have cockroaches all over everything and people having allergic reaction to cockroaches. A lot of people are allergic to roaches. We don't have people getting bit by rats and mice. We don't have people getting hantavirus because we have all these pesticides to keep all these things suppressed. And this way we have nice things. We have nice things, but the cost is tremendous. And so the industry has to be corrupt. If it was moral, it wouldn't exist. Back to the video.
You know that just these accounts may have been underpriced. So whatever the price is per hour, if say you have only half an hour's worth of service you can do, like they say half an hour from the time you show up, that means filling out your paperwork, getting out, grabbing your equipment, going inside, introducing yourself, do a quick little look around, and out in less than half an hour. Like all that. And if they get overrun, then we got to sell them more service. Like, you guys signed a fucking contract, and I'm not going to fuck the customer over just because we underpriced it.
And lest anybody say that I'm being self-righteous, like who are you to judge other people? Okay, I willingly participated in this industry, and I did things that were immoral. And I'm considering that person I used as an example. He came over from a competitor, and he had complaints about the bureaucratic nonsense and some of the corruption at that place, and thought the place I worked at was so much better. And he ended up being one of the worst fucking people to work where I worked. And I, as the idealist, still ended up doing things that were spiritually corrupt. Because I wanted to make $1. I wanted to pay the rent. I wanted to pay my basic bills. Yet I submitted to it because I thought it was better than ending up homeless. I thought it was better than working, in fast food for minimum wage. I put the material above the spiritual. And I may well go into in another video how I think probably the only truly moral people out there are the people who end up impoverished and homeless in our civilization, because they don't submit or participate willingly, either directly or even indirectly, in the moral corruption of our civilization. They may just take the scraps people throw away and submit neither in body or soul or financially to this beastly system that we live under. So let's be clear, I'm not a righteous man, and even as the most idealistic one, I was still behaving in a bad way, which just kind of emphasizes how fucking corrupt the industry is. Mind you, I'm fully responsible for my actions, but in order to actually make a living in the industry, I had to do the wrong thing. And it was an absolutely, like, the pest control industry is morally corrupt and absolutely necessary for our modern civilization to function. Let that sink in. The pest control industry is morally corrupt and absolutely necessary for our modern civilization to function. As is usury, as is bombing other countries who might challenge our country's economic supremacy. So much of what we do to function is corrupt. And that's part of why we're going down. Because if the spiritual foundation is rotten, then the material foundation will not stand. It will go down. Thank you for listening.
You guys signed a fucking contract, and I'm not going to fuck the customer over just because we underpriced it. That's our problem. That's not their problem. Guess what? You probably should have charged them up front for a clean out, put it in the contract. Guess what? You have a problem. You got ants, you got mice, you got holes in the wall. We're going to do all this exclusion work first. We're going to kill all your pests first, and then we're going to maintain it for this price. Wouldn't do it. And you know what? If it turns out sometimes a building is well maintained and it gets overrun, you don't know about a hole. There's a hole that nobody found until it happens, right? And you got fucking mice crawling all over the place. And if they're only paying so much per hour, well, that's too goddamn bad for us. We signed a contract. We have to fulfill that contract. Now, we could wipe out the pests and say, look, if we're going to continue to do business going forward, we want a new contract, because obviously there's we evaluated things. But straight up, you don't have to pay more up front. We have to solve the problem before we renegotiate. They wouldn't do it. So it's just constant, like, fuckery. And if you're talking about environmental pollution, like, pesticide drift is a normal fucking thing. They talk about, there's no drift. Oh, I time and time again, I've seen perimeter sprays, and that shit fucking drifts. It does. Doesn't matter if they turn down the pressure and loosen up the nozzles, you get bigger droplets. That shit fucking drifts. doing a fly spray, doing a midge fly service outside of a major building, and that shit drifts. I mean, you're shooting a high pressure spray. It's going up fucking 15, 20 feet. So you can get the whole wall of the building. That's going to splatter. It's going to drift. Not to mention it's going to land on you. I went to a building once. It was a factory. It was a metal-sided factory. And flies were an issue. And they had plenty of fly lights and such inside, but these tiny midge flies and stuff would get in through the metal siding. So you would coat the exterior of the building with insecticide, and that way when they landed on it, they would die rather than go in the building. So I show up. I said, you guys can turn off all your air intakes because this stuff can't be going in the ventilation system. Like, okay, everything's off. Good. I go and do my spray. That stuff's falling down on me, and if it's falling on me, it's also getting blown with the wind. That was a super hot day. It was a hot springtime. Oh my God, it was really hot. Late spring, early summer, sweltering. I'm doing the spray. And there were black flies biting the shit out of me. They were all over my face. Now, I wasn't going to wear a full face respirator and a Tyvek suit on top of it because I would have died of heat exhaustion. I would have passed out. And they would say, you need to take breaks. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, sure. So I did it. That shit's falling down on my head. It's starting to burn my eyelids. My skin's on fire. And by the time I'm done doing this industrial building, there are no more flies landing on me because all that drift land down on me. That's the large droplets. The small droplets just blow away, okay? I was my head was covered in pesticide, even though I was wearing a hat. Doesn't matter, it gets in your face. My eyelids are on fire, my face is on fire. It was disgusting. Metaphorically on fire, chemically speaking, not literally on fire, okay? Did the job. And then a couple years later, I got eczema on my face. Now, I'm not saying there's a direct connection between the pesticide I used, which was lambda-cyhalothrin, aka Demand CS, which is a great insecticide, by the way. It just kills shit. Right, so I'm not trying to impugn the reputation of the manufacturer there. I'm just saying that's the product they use. But I tell you right now, I don't think I would have developed eczema. Now, there may be a genetic predisposition in my family bloodline because I have a young relative who also has eczema around her eyes. She had them in her early 20s. So maybe that's it. But I also, one time I got some fipronil-based ant gel in a cut on my finger, on my right index finger, and I never healed from it since. That got in there, and I got this eczema. It just cracks all the time when I flex it. It's all scar tissue and cracking and nasty. And so it's a dirty fucking industry. At the same time, maybe you have no choice. They say, hey, what about secondary kills from rodenticide? Like, what else are you going to do? The buildings are going to get overrun. I'm sure you could put non-toxic baits in your exterior rodent stations, have snap traps in them, and have routine daily service or every few days go in, check the traps, remove the mice, remove the rats, reset the traps, close the traps. You could do that. No one's willing to pay for that shit. Nobody. It's expensive. It takes time. The whole industry is just race against time because pesticide insurance is really expensive, and of course, corporations want to make their money. And I work for a reasonable company, and then it's one of the big names out there. I've heard of their technicians doing airplane days. They talk about gas and airplane day, where you show up and just leave, and you can't get your work done, so you leave an invoice and you go. And if they call back with a complaint, that's fine. You go back and treat again for the first time. And it's just a consequence of our modern civilization. If you want to have a bug-free environment, then you got to spray pesticides. If you want to make a profit, you got to overschedule your people. If you want to have a modern industrial civilization, you're going to have pesticide drift. You're going to have poisoning in the water. You're going to have poisoning in the air. The bees are going to die. You're going to have an amazing insecticide that you apply 1 foot up from the foundation, 1 foot out, all the way around. It's supposed to kill carpenter ants. But then it turns out it wipes out all the bugs on the property. You know what I mean? Do what you got to do. I mean, if you get roaches in your house, what are you supposed to do? Just vacuum them up? No, you got to kill the fuckers. And something like fipronil-based baits are good because it's secondary knockdown. They eat it, they poop it out, others eat the poop, and then they all get poisoned, they all fall down. That's great. You got to do something about bed bugs, IGRs, whatever. You got to do something about fleas. I got a great flea spray. It's an IGR. It also has some knockdown to it, too. It has a little bit of pyrethrin, but it's mostly just IGR, I believe. And you spray everything down with it, and then you ventilate the house. You let it sit for a while, then you ventilate the house, and then once it's dry, just everything's dead. All the fleas die. You give your carpet a good vacuum. All the eggs hatch. They come out into the IGR. They can't breathe, and they die. It's great. But so I think we're victims of our own success. I think that a dirty ass industry, literally and morally, it's just a consequence of our modern civilization. There's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, if you don't want pharaoh ants crawling up people's IV lines, infecting the wounds with whatever shit they've been crawling through, then you need insecticides. If you don't want carpenter ants tearing your wooden house apart, because you can't afford to get shit repaired, you have like a water leak and the wood's starting to rot, and then you got to use insecticides. If you want to prevent mice from overrunning your home and giving you hantavirus or any other infections from being bit by rodents or breathing in the dust of their feces, or your cats eat them and then they end up getting tapeworms, then you got to use rodenticides. You can button up your house all you want. They're going to find a hole. You got to deal with the rodent pressure some way, which means using anticoagulants, which means sometimes owls and hawks and whatever are going to end up eating toxic rodents that end up killing them. I don't like it. What else are you supposed to do? You can do, proactive management. You can keep your wood piles away from the house. You can keep the leaf litter cleaned up. You can try to repair the holes in the house. You do some exclusion work and all that, and that's great. But eventually, they're still going to climb the house. Rats and mice can climb siding and get up into wherever. Yeah, you can try to stop every hole, but eventually they're going to get in. They're going to get in. They're going to eat the bugs in the walls. They're going to get into your whatever, your flour, your boxes of cereal. They're going to eat your soap flakes, whatever. And, eventually, you can get diseases from them, or they could bite you. And it's going to keep going. We're talking about environmental damage. This does tons of drift from spraying. Whether or not it does significant damage, I'm sure it does a degree of chronic damage, low grade, like someone who smokes half a pack of cigarettes each day. That's not a lot of smoking. But over time, it still hurts you compared to someone who has 2 packs a day. Yeah, it's still going to fucking eat away at your body slowly and slowly wear you down, depending on your constitution. So you have all this pesticide spraying. You got the chem lawn, and not just the chems on the lawn, but like all the herbicides and insecticides. I mean, I need them too. I mean, you've got yellow jackets around. You can't let the yellow jackets live. They sting people, especially if you have an allergy to their venom. And they get in the walls of your house. Guess what? Sometimes the easiest way to do is open up the wall and set off a total release bug bomb and get out and let that just gas them out. Bam. They all fall down dead. You wash down the surface as you go on. You just live with the fact that you have pesticide poisoning. It's better than getting stung. It's better than your pets and your family and all that getting stung by yellow jackets or bald-faced hornets or anything else. I mean, you can't just let your home get overrun by pests. And you can't afford to hire someone to stand around with a vacuum cleaner just sucking them up all day. So it's a dirty industry. It's a dirty industry physically speaking. It's a dirty industry morally speaking. But it's also necessary. Our system depends on immorality to keep going, and not just in terms of pest control. Just one example. It depends on usury, it depends on debt, it depends on greed. And in return, we get nice things. Thank you for listening.